Welcome to Education Forum. I'm Herman Badillo, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University. The improvement of education affects all New Yorkers. This program will focus on the key educational issues and challenges before us all. My guest today is Assemblyman Roger Green, who's an assemblyman from Brooklyn, covering parts of Park Slope and Bed-Stuy and a number of areas, but he is also the new chairman of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus in Albany. And that's a very important position because those legislators tend to influence the course of the debate, particularly in issues such as education, which are so important to the Black and Puerto Rican community. Assemblyman Green, you just finished your convention. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we just had our 30th annual conference and weekend, which started several years ago, 30 years ago, when a number of elected officials made what was defined as the Midnight Walk, which was an attempt to secure additional power for African American and Latino elected officials in the state of New York. Since that time, we now have 33 elected members of the state Black and Puerto Rican Legislative Caucus. And I think now the challenge is not the quantity of the membership, it's the quality of the membership. What we can do to leverage our support for issues such as educational reform, both in the higher education system and the educational system.
Well, what are your priorities in education? I don't mean just you, but of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus.
Well, I mean, the key issue for us now, I think, has been shaped by the judge's decision related to the campaign for fiscal equity, which called upon state government to restructure its school aid formula for the city of New York and for the high needs districts around the state. I think that is probably the main issue that we're very concerned about. Akin to that, obviously...
Well, let me go back to that. The judge said that the formula for assistance to New York City in education was in violation of the state constitution.
Yes, right.
And that makes it a constitutional issue.
Yeah.
Now, he wrote a 200-page opinion, and he ordered the legislature to come up with a formula for rewriting the school aid formula by September 15th. In the meantime, the governor appealed the decision. But that doesn't prevent the state legislature from meeting the requirements of the judge and coming up with a formula that will be better as far as we in New York City are concerned. Do you think that you can do that by September 15th?
I think we'll be challenged to do it. Whether we can do it or not, I don't know. But it's pretty clear that we're poised to do it. I think clearly the members of the caucus and the members of the New York City delegation have said that this is our priority in terms of our legislative agenda for this year. And we're going to give it a shot. I think the real question is to ensure that what we do doesn't diminish the opportunities for meaningful education for children from around the rest of the state. There's those who have posed this Robin Hood concept, that you take from other districts in order to bring more resources back to New York City. I would suggest that that is not the way to go. I think what we need to do is just raise the bar so that all the children in the state receive additional resources, and that in that context, we can do that, I think, without,
Well, what the judge decided really isn't new. I mean, we've known for many, many years that the city of New York gets shortchanged, and I think every analysis that I've ever seen points this out.
Yeah.
And except now we have a constitutional requirement that something be done about it.
Right.
Why has it been so difficult in the past to bring about change?
Well, I think part of the problem has been voting power. The shift in power to suburbs in upstate New York has favored political decisions that have been made in Albany, particularly with respect to education and other issues that impact on our urban centers. And so I think that's one of the things that has happened, and it's in that context that there was a need for some type of judicial intervention.
Well, just so that the people in New York City who are watching us may know, has the problem been between the Assembly, which is Democratic, and the State Senate, which is Republican, or has it been within the Assembly as well as within the State Senate?
It's been more of a tension between the Assembly and the Senate. There are some members of the Assembly, Democratic majority, who also have opposed any changes in school aid formula, but that's been marginalized. There are not many of them. We have the votes to get this done, if in fact we can arrive at a consensus with the Senate, and that's really where the real problem has occurred. And I think to arrive at a consensus, it means that another third party has to step in, and that's the governor. He has to use his executive power, his bully pulpit, to really fashion a working unity between the two legislative bodies.
Well, even if the governor has appealed, you still could, in the process of negotiating over the budget, come to an agreement whereby the governor would provide the kind of money that the judge was talking about, because in fact that's the way it should be done, and that's what the judge pointed out should have happened in the first place.
Oh, no doubt. And I think that's our position, that we need to take this decision as an opportunity. Dr. King used to talk about the concept of creative tension. This gives us the creative tension to arrive at some new solutions if we move forward. And I think I agree with you, that's what we need to do right now.
Let's go beyond that issue and look at what President Bush is proposing, because apparently he is turning out to be the education president. His bill on education was the first one that was introduced by him, and that was based upon the proposals that he had supported when he was governor of Texas. What do you think of President Bush's proposal? I
think some of the proposals make sense. I'm particularly warm to the notion that we need to have more accountability, particularly for low-performing schools, that I think both from a federal standpoint and a state level, we need to withdraw monies from those schools that aren't working. But we also need to do some other things related to ensuring that our teachers can teach. And to do that, I think that means, number one, reducing class size. And I think he has a long way to go in terms of addressing that issue. And also teacher preparation, which, quite honestly, that is related to the higher education system as well.
Well, that's our fault. We at CUNY, as you know, have been doing a poor job in the colleges that provide for teacher education. And as you know, we talked about the problems at Medgar Evers College, where we have that situation. But one of the things I've done is I brought in a new dean for teacher education to supervise all of the colleges to make sure that nobody gets a degree in education who cannot pass the teacher's exam, because we can't have teachers teaching in the school system who themselves cannot pass exams. And unfortunately, the highest percentage of teachers in the public school system come from the city university. So that's why it's important that we deliver on that.
I think, you know, CUNY is, I mean, the relationship between school reform is directly related to in-service and pre-service staff development for teachers, professional development for teachers, and CUNY is inextricably linked to that process. And I mean, we are all very pleased that you appointed this dean. I want you to know that, because it didn't exist before. And so at least there's one person that can be held accountable within the system to raise the standards within the schools of education in CUNY. And there's no question that it's desperately needed.
Well, you know, you have been a strong supporter of Medgar Evers College over the years, and we talked about that many times. We're trying to get additional funds to ensure that Medgar Evers gets a new building, because unfortunately it has one of the worst buildings in the whole system, and really no campus. I mean, we have some beautiful campuses in Lehman College and Brooklyn College and other institutions, but nothing like it at Medgar Evers. Do you think you can help us with that?
We're trying. You know, one of the agenda items for the caucus is to change the language, legislative language that currently restricts funding for Medgar Evers, to put it completely in the four-year the citation of other four-year colleges. We understand that the governor is moving in that direction. So I think it's possible this year that we may get this done, but we want to thank you, other members of the board, and the chancellor for the kind of advocacy that you've provided in Albany on this issue. In the past, Medgar Evers didn't have that kind of leadership. even from the central administration and also from the board, and to see this kind of leadership being displayed at this point in time only strengthens our position in Albany. And I think that is in part why the governor is warming towards doing what we need to do.
We want to be sure, I want to be sure that every college performs, and that we have high standards so that when the students graduate, they will be able to join the economic life of the city, because the jobs are there. It's not a question of creating jobs. It's a question of having the people who are educationally qualified for the jobs that exist. But I also feel we have to start at the beginning. And one of the things that I thought was impressive about President Bush's proposals is he wants to do teaching in Head Start. And he says that it should not be merely a support program, but that the young people should begin to get instruction. What is your view about that?
I think that's an excellent idea. I think one is for teachers, and I think also Head Start has been an outstanding resource for parent support as well. Parents have learned how to manage their homes better, to provide an educational ethic for their children through the Head Start program. So it has really served as a good model and prototype for that kind of learning organization. So I think the notion that he has to now use it as an ability or a resource to train additional teachers, I think makes an awful lot of sense.
Because the problem has been with Head Start, which was started in the Johnson administration, that Head Start was successful, but then the whole process dropped. So we need to have not just Head Start, but pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, first and second grade, to ensure that the Head Start that the kids get remains a Head Start, not that it drops backwards.
Yeah, we've seen too many examples of the findings of Head Start is that children would succeed up until they leave the Head Start program, and then unfortunately, in far too many instances, when they've gone into the public school system, they've lost a lot of what they had achieved during the Head Start program. I also think that that is in part related to the parents drop off also, and so that there's got to be a continuum of guidance, not only for the students but also for the parents, to maintain their commitment to an educational ethic for these children, and then I think you'll see success.
I think so too, and we'll be back after these announcements.
Okay.
I'm Javed Mashkuri. I joined the Peace Corps because it gave me an opportunity to do something worthwhile in a place that was much different than the place that I grew up and knew. When I got to Mali, it blew me away. My job was to train local masons and well diggers to construct safe drinking water wells. Peace Corps showed me what happens when you don't have access to health care. We were providing clean water, which to everyone there is health. And we try to do the same thing here by just providing health care. Compassion, perspective, a sense of adventure. Each and every day, those three things help me get through the day and make me a better doc. It's given me more self-confidence in dealing with patients and other people, and also helps me through the most difficult times because I've already been through a lot of those. I'd recommend the Peace Corps to anyone that was thinking about any job. It'll help them excel and be better at whatever they do. I think in Peace Corps you learn the value of service. You're going to want to be in a position to give service back.
Peace Corps volunteers, changing the world, changing America.
We're back today with Assemblyman Roger Green, Assemblyman from Brooklyn, who is chairman of the Committee on Families and Children, but who's also the chairman of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus in Albany. Another of the items in President Bush's program was the idea that if a school is failing after 3 years and nothing is happening, that then the federal funds would be taken away from that school. What is your view that, and the money given to parents, which some people would call vouchers? What is your response to that?
Well, I think that the notion of withdrawal of money from the schools makes sense. Conversion of schools, that makes sense. I mean, even the State Education Department is doing that. I might add, because the caucus a few years ago in meeting with Commissioner Mills said that in the designation of a low-performing schools, those schools should be closed down. And it was at that meeting also that I had said to the Commissioner Mills that I thought that the use of charters as a form of conversion would make sense.
So you support charter schools?
Oh, I support charters. I was the first, I think, one of the first Democrats to come out in support of charter schools, and actually wrote an editorial page article with Faso, who's now the minority leader of the Assembly. So I did support charters. So I believe that charters, public charters, create healthy competition within the public school system. It's a way of challenging the command bureaucracy to do better on behalf of our children. So I support charters.
And you would support increasing the number of charter schools beyond the 100 has been approved?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are any number of different charter formulations I think that would work. I think the key thing, again, is healthy competition. That, you know, as a Democrat, I came into government being opposed to big monopolies, and I'm opposed to monopolies whether that exists within the private sector or the public sector. And so I think that anything that spurs healthy competition makes some sense.
Okay, now here's the competition to the public school system. First, we have charters.
Yeah.
Then we have the transfer of public schools to private organizations, which is now pending before the Board of Education, right, with five schools, public schools, being transferred over to Edison, which is a profit-making venture. Do you support that one?
That I have some problems with. I think that the question of raising or creating a profit motive within the public school system creates some problems for me, particularly with respect to elementary, middle schools, and some of the secondary schools. I think we've got to be very careful in moving in that direction. For me, I'm not opposed to the accumulation of wealth. For me, it's how the wealth is distributed, and I'm more concerned about that wealth being maintained within the community, primarily for parents and for students.
So if it was a nonprofit group, you would support it, or not as a profit group?
Not for nonprofit, I would support. I might even consider the formulation of a collaboration between a private and public charter if it were particularly in the area of vocational technical education. In Germany, that has been proven to be very successful, but it's also successful because the profits are shifted back to the students who, as part of an apprenticeship training program, receive money, receive wages, receive stipends, and that's a different story. So for me, the question is whether or not Mr. Whittle gets all the money or whether the students get the money and the parents get the money. And if we can create a formulation that keeps wealth within the community for students, for families, then maybe, you know, we should look at that.
Okay, now let's take up then the issue of vouchers themselves, which is where the parents get the money.
Right.
In other words, the school is failing and the parents are given the money to use and to go to whichever school they choose. Would you support that?
The real challenge to vouchers for me at this point in time is whether or not the vouchers are going to be used in the context of parochial school education, private schools that are involved in both religious indoctrination or political indoctrination. I would be opposed to that.
But if there was a prohibition against use for parochial schools, would you support it?
What I would like to do is to study it, and I think we haven't studied it. There's not been one hearing on vouchers. You know, I think we've taken a position that's been somewhat anti-intellectual. So I think we at least need to study it. We do have a voucher system in the state of New York in education, and it's in the higher education system.
Right, exactly.
There are students who receive TAP aid, and the private colleges receive Bundy aid. And some of those institutions are religious, but the students attend those schools with scholarships, and they are prohibited from any religious indoctrination. So, you know, we do have a voucher program, and the question is whether or not something like that could be applicable to the secondary system, the public school system.
Actually, you worked out such a system for us at CUNY with your supplemental tuition assistance program, right?
Yes,
Tell us about that one.
Yeah, well, it was very important to provide ongoing aid to students who are working class and working poor. It supplemented the tuition assistance program, particularly for students who were staying in school for a longer period of time. And it was very important. I remember we worked that out with Mark Allen. Mark Allen Siegel was then chairman of the Higher Education Committee.
Now, we need more help, I want you to know, as long as you're here, because we have many students who come in to us at the community colleges especially, who have a high school diploma, but who really cannot read or write or do arithmetic at the high school level. So we have to give them remedial assistance.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because they have to pay tuition, they use the tuition assistance program for the remedial assistance.
Right.
So therefore, if they have to take a year and a half or 2 years, they use up all their TAP money.
Right.
So would it be possible to have a special program, you who have done this in the past, to have a special tuition assistance program just for the issue of remedial education, so that the students are not charged with something that is not their fault. The fault really is of the public school system.
Absolutely.
They come in with a high school diploma, but they're not doing anything at the 12th grade level. They're performing at the 6th to 9th grade level, as the judge said in that decision.
Yeah.
So do you think it might be possible to structure such a new program?
Yeah, I think we have a moral obligation to do so, and I've spoken to the chairman of the Higher Education Committee, Ed Sullivan, and he's saying that we're going to propose that in our budget this year, and hopefully we'll get that enacted into law as well. I think we have a moral obligation to do that, but I also think that, as you've said so often in the past, that structural change is needed to be made, particularly in the public school system, so that we don't receive as many students as we're receiving now in the higher education system who are not prepared for higher education. And I think that's a critical, issue.
We've got to eliminate social promotion, and we have to evaluate the students from the beginning. That's why I support the idea of Head Start and pre-kindergarten, so we begin to evaluate the students long before they get into the first grade and evaluate them year by year so that we can help them.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that we also have to do is to, just as we're keeping and maintaining an accountability over students, we've got to maintain accountability over systems such as the Board of Education, as well as teachers. I think one of the things that I've been very disturbed about is that the first discussion about standards were first placed on the back of students, and that's not, I'm not saying that's inappropriate. We should do that because that's consistent with calling for an educational ethic. But at the same time, it means that everybody who's supposed to be supporting those students, from the parents to the educators, the pedagogical leaders in the school building, have also got to come up to new standards as well.
But what do we do now for this summer? I think last summer was a disaster because there were some 300,000 students who supposedly were going to be left back.
Right.
Many of them did not attend summer school.
Right.
Many of those who attended summer school were passed anyway.
Right.
So now we have 1 year's experience, and now we're looking forward to this summer. And I don't see any great preparations going forward to make things different. What would you suggest?
I suggest that many of the summer schools should be held on college campuses, number one, and starting with those college campuses that have schools of education, because we would have a win-win solution there. Students in your schools of education who are preparing to become teachers in the public school system would have first-hand clinical experience with some of these students. That's number one. Number two, I think by getting students on the college campuses, it also raises levels of expectation about what level of academic standards are going to be demanded on these students as they enter a society that is increasingly shaped by the information age and science and technology. That's important. Number three, I think many of these students need not to have the same type of education that's already failed them in the public school system. So that on the college campuses we could create more creative opportunities for them, not only remediation but enrichment. We could create thematic approaches in areas that they're interested in, whether it's arts, science, even sports. So I would hope that as opposed to pushing these students into school buildings that are not air-conditioned, where the teachers are already tired, where the instruction is not creative, that we would do something that's a lot more creative, and then I think they will come.
Well, last summer, the Board of Education placed a good portion of the blame on the parents. It said the parents were not cooperating, and therefore many of the students didn't go to the schools. How do you think the parents could be better instructed this time?
Well, I think we've got a real challenge. I mean, I think we do have work to do in terms of encouraging the parents to, participate more in the lives of their children. But the board also has to remove the barriers that currently exist for parental participation. In far too many of the schools,
which are what?
Well, in far too many schools, I'm not saying all of them, but there are some principals that don't want the parents to be actively involved in the lives of the students in the school building. The structure of the board and for many of the supportive activities for students, from things such as basic as interscholastic athletics are organized at times that aren't user-friendly for parents. When I was growing up, parents would come to basketball games and football games that were held between the hours of 6 and 7. If you're running tournaments at 3 o'clock and the parents are working-class parents, they're not going to be there. So little things like that are an indication that the system isn't user-friendly to parents. Parents get that message and they stay away.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so thank you very much for coming, and
thank you.
Good luck on your legislative session.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You can reach us by email at our website, www.cuny.tv, or write to us at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016.